What's going on, guys? It is MurderInc here, and today we're going to be talking about Arbiter versus Rhazin. Now, this is going to be a really cool comparison. I'm really looking forward to what you guys have to say about this. Now, Arbiter and Rhazin, and huge disclaimer to this next phrase, are the two free champions worth talking about in this game. Now, yes, there are other daily login rewards, however, I believe these two are the best match to kind of face off to see who claims the title of the best free champion. And once again, when I say free, I understand it takes a lot of work to get Arbiter, and there's a lot of luck involved and resources that you do need to get Rhazin, but that's not what we're talking about here. I want to know, after showing you what I'm going to show you on where I personally think these champions shine, where they can help you, what you guys think as far as really making a dent on your account progression. So the first champion we're going to be talking about here is actually going to be Rhazin Scarhide. Now, he is a permanent fusion champion. Most of you know that. Some of you may not know that if you are starting out in this game here. And pretty good base stats. His base speed is a bit low, and I'm not going to go into huge detail on what he does. 3 hit removes a buff, defense down, and weaken. Does require books for him to be extremely useful, and legendary books are not easy at all to come by, especially in the early game. And his A3 is a 7-turn AoE unbooked that decreases the turn meter by 100%, finally having an aura increasing ally resistance in arena battles by 90. So as I said, this champion is a permanent fusion. He will always be, well, hopefully, he will always be in the game as a fusion. They won't get rid of him. I can't imagine them doing anything. Looks really cool, and the question is, where can he help you, and what are his strengths going to be? So the first thing I want to do is I kind of want to look at this screen here. He's probably not going to be a vital champion for your campaign progress, but he definitely can be. Since everyone starts with a magic affinity starter, him being red affinity does have that bonus there, but you would have to be extremely lucky or actively spending money on this game to get all the shards needed, or even pull this champion before you're done with the campaign. Now, Nightmare campaign is something to consider since it does take quite a bit of time. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is faction wars. Just to skip over dungeons briefly for a second here. Those of you who don't know, Rhazin is a key component in reaching all the way to stage 21 for the Elysian faction. It is a bit easier now than it was before, but the fact that he hits so hard, he strips buffs, especially with one of the popular waves having 3 rush card the towers in it. He can take away that block damage buff, do a lot of damage. He has that turn meter down for the final boss, so he's a really good champion and very strong in faction war progressions. Now, he's actually someone where as soon as I got double Rhazin, which is very common for the pre-nerf faction wars, using 2 Rhazin was kind of the key to getting that difficult content down before it was nerfed so many times. The next thing we have is Arena. Now, there are many popular teams with Rhazin in it, using him as a leader. One of the most popular was my favorite Arena team back in the day, which was in fact Rhazin leader, double Skull Crown, and Brachus. This was like the ultimate counter to the speed meta, where you would go second, they would get their turn, you would have a good amount of resistance. I had my Skull Crowns in lifesteal gear, and they were such a big threat to every team that since they weren't able to completely kill my team in one shot, since Skull Crowns do have that unkillable buff that they put on themselves, and as we know, Brachus revives himself, getting that turn, doing crazy damage, putting that true fear on, so he's really strong in the arena. However, he does take a bit of gear to be able to work towards that level, but he can definitely pass in the lower stages of the arena as a solid option for you. Next, we have a clan boss, and I really don't think I need to introduce Rhazin Scarhide to the clan boss. While he does need books to be extremely successful, I have personally built a 100 million team without any single poison champions on it, and I will have that thumbnail for you on the screen here. But what we did was we took a team with 5 champions, no one in a poison set, no poisoner at all, simply using Rhazin Scarhide and his raw damage to hit 100 million damage on the Ultra Nightmare Clan boss was one of the most fun teams we've ever had. Rhazin is probably one of my favorite champions in the game. Obviously everyone knows Turbold is my favorite, but one of my favorite is definitely Rhazin because he does hit really hard. It's awesome to see those big numbers, and the fact that he applies that defense down on weaken and strips the buff on any affinity boss is really cool. So the Doom Tower is kind of very new content. I can grade him in the Doom Tower. I would say he is pretty good, not amazing, not terrible for the Doom Tower. This point is obviously much more opinion based since the Doom Tower did kind of just come out. We're still in our second cycle here, and I mean, let's just check where we are actually in this second cycle. I believe we've only had, there's kind of still a bug here, so we've only had 50 floors done and 5 total secret rooms done so far in this second cycle here, so I'm surprised they haven't fixed this bug yet, actually. And getting back to my point, so we are kind of fresh on the Doom Tower. I really don't want to speculate on either champion as far as how well they can do in the Doom Tower. Resistance is good, but his aura is only for arena, so that's not really a talking point. Having a single target defense down and weaken isn't as strong in 5-man content as you would think, where there is no end boss at the end, but the turn meter down on the AoE is extremely strong. And one thing, going back to arena, Rhazin is actually very good in the Platinum Arena. I don't want to speculate that not a lot of people use him, since it's really hard to know what the, I guess, rank 300 through rank 150 or 100-ish are doing, but I can tell you that actually last week I did place rather well in Platinum, and Rhazin was part of my defense there. Maybe I'll make a video on the defense that I used, but he's really good there since he does use his A3 first, which is the bog down, reducing the turn meter to kind of take teams off guard, make the defense last so long that people end up just quitting, and I have gotten quite a few wins off of that, which is very hard to do in the Platinum Arena, especially on a defense point of view. So now that we've gone over that, we can take a quick look at dungeons here. The potion keeps, obviously Rhazin's hit or miss for the potion keeps, has to make sense with his affinity for him to do well there. I would say both Rhazin and Arbiter are pretty even as far as how they do in the potion keep, so I'm kind of leaning towards just crossing that off of the list altogether. Same thing with Minotaur. Ice Golem, once again, he does have benefit to the end boss there, but he is going to struggle with any affinity problems that he's going to have. That is something to consider. Spider's Den, I'm pretty sure everybody knows at this point, Spider Stage 20 is not friendly at all to Rhazin, and it is definitely not worth using him for Stage 20. However, Stage 19 is a very large roadblock. As you can see, I haven't actually done this since first progressing on this account. Whenever this was, I'd actually be really curious to know when I did progress through here. And one interesting thing that I do want to show you guys, I'm not sure if you know about this. If you are curious as to when you actually started playing this game, you go onto the forums for Plarium, you set up your account, it will actually find out when you started playing. So for me, I started December 13th, 2018 at 1:55. So that's when I started. So just for some background, in case you're curious, you can head to the forums, sign up, and it'll show you when you first started. But the main point here actually was to show you that it's cool seeing this 16-minute and 55-second time, because this still holds true to today in the current state of the game, where Stage 19 was a very hard roadblock to get through. Now granted, back when I did it, there were a lot fewer champions to kind of pick from, but still I'm going to say it's pretty much equivalent as far as difficulty level compared to Stage 20, because once you hit Stage 20 there are so many strong magic affinity champions, which has kind of been the balance struggle of this game so far. But Rhazin definitely fits into this. Getting back to the main point of the video, where his defense down and weaken definitely applied to Stage 19 to kind of help you get through it, as well as his AoE turn meter down, which will prove beneficial to a number of teams that will help you get through this Stage 19 Spider dungeon. Moving on to a dungeon like Dragon, Rhazin is going to be a strong affinity for the final stage of Dragon. He isn't going to be used in many speed clearing teams, but progression teams, him being red affinity, being able to get weak hits from the dungeon itself is going to be very strong altogether. So I really do like that point for Dragon and Rhazin Scarhide. And finally, moving on to the Fire Knight, he is a multi-hitter. Now, the only problem with being a multi-hitter is he does have the A2 and the A3, so if it comes at a bad time, and unfortunately the AIs work this way, it end up wasting his very valuable A2 or his A3 for the Fire Knight, but he still does have that chance if you do speed tune your team properly and make sure you're killing the waves evenly every single time without too much RNG, that he will always use his A1 once you actually reach the Fire Knight shield. And for this dungeon, he doesn't suffer from any weak affinity, so that is definitely going to be the plus here, as the stage 20 dungeon is in fact red affinity. So once again, for this being a free champion, and remember what I said about the word free. I know people kind of get uptight about words like that, but we already explained what I meant by free. So this free champion is one of the stronger champions in the game overall, as far as an overall progression scope goes when comparing it to someone like an Arbiter. So I'm interested to get into Arbiter next and then get your feedback on who you think is going to be the overall MVP. Once I drop one thing in particular about Arbiter that I think you're going to find very interesting and you might not have considered when I first started this video on the comparison. So now we are going to be talking about our next champion, who is in fact Arbiter. Now Arbiter is a great champion. We have the ability to apply the weaken on the A1. We can reduce the duration of enemy buffs with the A2. We have a turn meter fill, attack up, and a heal based on certain conditions on the A3, and then finally the A4, which it's kind of rare to see an A4 in a champion, if I'm being honest with you, if you had to count all of them side by side. But we have an A4 that revives all dead allies, fills their turn meter by a little bit, and grants this champion an extra turn. And the best combos, obviously the A4 and the A3 back to back, giving you a significant boost in turn meter, and finally increasing the speed in arena by 30%, followed by rather strong base stats. I say rather strong, 110 speed is definitely very good. So we have a lot going on here, and then you do have to consider books for Arbiter as well. He takes 3, 6, 7, 8, 9 books. While I don't think it's as many as Rhazin, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, I'm not going to go back to check. You don't really need all of these books for Arbiter, where as far as progression goes, usually you can get away with a 4-turn cooldown on the A3, and if you have to revive someone every 5 turns, you're probably going to be struggling a lot more if 7 turns is really going to be a deal breaker for you. As far as the A2 and A1, this is something that I haven't personally booked on my own Arbiter. Once I got the A3 and A4 booked, I left her alone, and she has been that way ever since I got this champion. So the question is going to be, where does she shine? And one thing I want you to consider is, the first place we're going to talk about Arbiter, as opposed to Rhazin, are dungeons. Now we already said potion keeps and Minotaur, we're kind of going to cut those out for these 2 champions since it's kind of hard to gauge on a level, but this is where dungeons get interesting. You have to have all 4 of these dungeons completed at stage 20 before you get Arbiter. So while she may provide additional support for your teams, making them smoother, more consistent, definitely much faster in the end, how can you actually rank her value in progression on these dungeons, if at all, since you have to have these completely done by the time you get there? Now, she is a void champion, so that means she doesn't have a weak affinity to any of these stage 20 dungeons itself, making it much easier to plug and play Arbiter as soon as you get her, have her maxed out in the proper gear to really help you out on stage 20. But the fact that you already have to have stage 20 done to get this champion as a requirement is very interesting. Now, you can get very lucky and pull Rhazin, I want to say halfway through your progression, or you can spend some money, get him early on into progression with how your fusion goes, or you can actually end up getting Rhazin and Arbiter at the same time. So this is something kind of for the audience here. How do you kind of grade these 2 champions, with one of them having the potential of being pulled early and being used in substantial progression, or someone like an Arbiter who is guaranteed that you actually do get them after you have all of this completed already as far as stage 20 progress goes? So how would you grade the 2 champions together? As far as grading Arbiter's use, she's fantastic in every single one of these dungeons, and the only, I guess, outlier could be Spider's Den. She would only be used in I guess, certain types of teams, but the fact that she lowers the speed requirement since she is boosting the turn meter, more likely than not, first being the fastest person on your team, definitely lowers the speed for everyone that you do need going forward here, making her once again strong in all 4 of these dungeons no matter how you look at it. As far as campaign, the kind of same thing applies to the Arbiter missions. You're more likely than not going to be done with the campaign, and she is not really tanky enough and have enough survivability to be a huge asset to you once you get to the end levels of the Nightmare campaign. That's just my opinion. Maybe some of you have different experiences where you actually did use Arbiter, or you didn't have the Nightmare campaign completed. Once you got Arbiter and she was kind of the game changer for you, you can definitely let me know there. Now, Faction Wars is going to be a 50-50 topic for a lot of people. Now, when I look at the High Elf Crypt, going over what champions are available to you, there are actually quite a few options of champions you can use instead of Arbiter to get all the way through stage 21. In my personal opinion, this is one of the easier dungeons to get through, simply based off the fact that Apothecary is part of this list. Now, Apothecary and Arbiter are night and day champions. Arbiter is way better than Apothecary, and there's really no argument there. But what Apothecary does as a rare champion is enough to get you all the way through to stage 21 with another team of combined champions here without a doubt. So the fact that a rare champion can take Arbiter's place, and he definitely is a more than above average rare champion, but the fact that he can take the place of an Arbiter in Faction Wars like this is probably why I wouldn't rank Arbiter as high as they would Rhazin, since he is, I don't want to say mandatory because you can use other champions instead of Rhazin in the Lizardmen Stage 21 Faction Wars, but as far as Arbiter, she is a lot less required and doesn't really change as much for this dungeon as someone like Rhazin Scarhide, in my opinion. You can definitely correct me if you believe I'm extremely wrong on this. I would be interested to know if people use teams without Arbiter to actually complete the stage 21. Like, I have seen a few posts already saying it was very easy to get through even without using a ton of legendaries. So give me your feedback on that, and what do you think of me ranking Rhazin higher than someone like an Arbiter in the Faction Wars area alone? Moving on to the next one, we have Arena here. Now, I don't think anyone would ever make the argument that Arbiter isn't a fantastic, if not one of the best arena champions as far as turn meter boosting, her aura overall. So Arbiter's really strong here, not much of a talking point. I think Arbiter kind of takes the win in this area, kind of hands down. There can be some arguments, like I've said, with Platinum Defense, where I've personally used Rhazin still to this day, where he does shine very well, but we're talking about Arbiter here, not some other champion that gets a little bit of play here and there in the arena. So I think it's safe to say that Arbiter definitely takes the win for arena, tag team, and classic together. Now, the same thing kind of applies to what I was talking about with Rhazin Scarhide for the Doom Tower. I think it's way too early on to kind of judge these two champions in the Doom Tower, since no one really knows the best of the best for the comps yet, since we're so early into the Doom Tower. So I guess we'll leave this as a question mark for both of them. Now, I can see more use personally in my mind for someone like an Arbiter. So if I did have to pick a winner for this competition, I'm leaning more towards Arbiter than I am towards someone like a Rhazin Scarhide. Even though the defense down weekend is nice to have, the fact that it's single target really takes away from it. Next, we're going to have a clan boss discussion about Arbiter. Now, if you are not comfortably on Ultra Nightmare, you just got Arbiter for the first time and you got unlucky with counterattack, you can absolutely use Arbiter. Funny enough, when Unkillable was first the thing, before 6-star, before stage 20 dungeons, I actually ran, listen to this team just for a second, Rushguard the Tower, Steel Skull, Sir Nicholas, Arbiter, and who was my final champion? I almost want to say it was Rhazin Scarhide. Those are my 5 champions. It was a completely manual team and the most painful team I've ever made. It was exciting at the time because it was kind of the first iteration of Unkillable that this game's ever seen. Like I said, it was full manual. It had to do with a champion dying to the slam every single round, Arbiter using her A4 to revive, then her A3 to turn meter boost, and it was a cool team, definitely, but that's the only like necessity as far as, can we talk about GNL Deeks for a second? Sorry to get sidetracked, but friend, are you okay? You put 5 keys into Ultra Nightmare. What are you trying to prove? Asking for a friend. Okay, moving back onto the video. Early speed teams, people who don't have counterattack, I think Arbiter is definitely a great tool for the clan boss. However, I cannot justify in any way, shape, or form giving Arbiter the kind of win over someone like a Rhazin Scarhide for the clan boss, no matter how I look at it, because he is such a strong tool in this situation where it's really hard to argue about the kits, but I'm definitely open to any objection that anyone would have. Alright guys, so that's going to conclude my video. The question is, who wins? This isn't for me to decide, this is for you to decide. As the viewer, what is your opinion? Do we have Rhazin Scarhide taking the crown for the best free champion based on how I described free, or do we have Arbiter taking the crown as the best queen of free champions? So I'm really interested after the information I shared you on what you guys think. I'm not really necessarily leaning any particular way on the matter. I'm kind of looking for you guys because I don't really care about what I think. This is more of a thought-provoking video that I made to kind of see how you guys are thinking as viewers, to get your take on this. And as I said, there were some strong points made for both sides in my opinion, so definitely leave a comment, let me know what you think. And if you do enjoy this content, don't forget to subscribe, turn the notification bells, smash that like button, and I will see you in the next video. Until then, my friends, good day.